This mod introduces something crazy for a Portal game. People. Yeah, living, walking, talking people. That's insane, I know. But let's start from the beginning. I've heard you like Portal, so let's talk about one of the coolest Portal mods out there, Portal Stories Mel. No, not this Mel, the ginger one. What's so cool about this mod, you might ask? Well, first of all, it does something I don't think any other mod has done. It introduces two modes, Story Mode and Advanced Mode. The latter adds new obstacles to about half of the test chambers. It's also the only mod I know that lets you see the protagonist's hands. On top of that, we get a neat yellow retro portal gun that, combined with our heroine's red painted nails, looks fabulous. We also get a few cinematic cutscenes. There aren't many, but they highlight the most pivotal moments of the game, making them hit as hard as a Van Damme kick. Oh yeah, we get quite a bit of Cave Johnson. Not voiced by J.K. Simmons this time, but that's okay. This version of Cave Johnson is much younger, so it makes sense that he sounds different.
As a reminder, Aperture Science Innovators is not responsible for any injury you sustain, up to and including death by exposure to cosmic ray spallation. Don't worry though, we haven't had an accident like that in 3 days. Sorry, make that 3 minutes.
We also get a cool intro section that lets us see what Aperture looked like in 1952, before it all went to shit. The story in a nutshell is simple. We arrive for a test, things don't go as planned, and Aperture starts falling apart, as it usually does. From there, it's all about trying to find a way out, pretty basic stuff. Now let me tell you a bit more about the story without major spoilers. It kicks off with one of the coolest intro sequences in Portal history. We hop on a train, listening to pre-recorded messages.
And you know what? That dreaming became doing. Lots of doing.
I've definitely seen that somewhere before. The game is set in 1952, back when the company was still called Aperture Science Innovators. This was a time when only the elite were accepted into testing. That's why Cave Johnson addresses you as an astronaut, war hero or Olympian in his recordings. Much like in Half-Life 1, we get to see different parts of a facility filled with Aperture staff, and it looks fantastic. The place actually feels alive. People chatting while waiting for trains, tests being conducted, someone messing with the vending machine. It all adds up. It's not as massive as Black Mesa, but considering it's all built inside a salt mine, that's pretty fair. Upon arrival, we discover there's an entire living complex here, complete with a children's playground. So it's safe to assume whole families live on site, while some members commute to work via the metro. The place is completely empty though, since we arrive at night, which is part of our testing requirement. You see, we're not here to test portal guns. We're here to test the
Aperture Science Innovators short-term relaxation vault for a quick, deep sleep. And then you're done. That's why we brought you here at night. You're most likely a walking zombie. That'll give us the best results. But just remember, don't sleep too long. This isn't a bed and breakfast. And if you decide to stay tonight, I'm charging you rent for the next year.
Before getting there, we pass through the reception hall. Naturally, nobody's around because a cheapskate company like Aperture probably isn't paying for night shifts for non-essential bureaucracy. That said, the place absolutely nails the 1950s aesthetic. And as a bonus, we even get to see Caroline in her younger years. Heck, if we'd arrived during the day, we probably would have met her. After loitering for no more than 20 minutes, we hop into an elevator and descend into the more interesting parts of the facility. On the way, we hear about and even catch a glimpse of the
Aperture Science Innovators Suspended Testing Sphere.
Before everything went to hell, and it's epic. I've also got to say, they really nailed Cave Johnson's monologues here. Just listen to this.
Alright, you're now arriving at Aperture Central Station. Wait. Chris, get over here. How do you spell station? Okay, think about that for a second. Okay. Does station have an extra O before the I? Alright, listen to me. Pack your things. Because you're fired! Get out of my office.
Sounds legit, right? Once the elevator ride ends, We arrive at the test subject intake center, and this place looks amazing. If not for the ceiling, you'd barely even realize you're inside a cave. There's a neat parking lot filled with stylish retro cars, a promenade, and even a small waterfront area. There's a waterfall too, complete with stalagmites and stalactites, and it all looks gorgeous. Once we've gotten acquainted with all the most important and fascinating stuff in the lobby and offices, we move into the test subject waiting area, where we get a look at those neat little retro turrets. Honestly, slap a fedora on them and they'd fit right in with Great Depression era gangsters. Then, in the next room, we finally reach our short-term relaxation vault, where we get the first cinematic scene, and, as intended by the test, we go to sleep. We wake up, and judging by the chapter name, we can already guess how things turned out. Anyway, we're contacted by Cave Johnson, who assures us that everything is fine and guides us to pick up a very nice looking yellow portal gun. The place is completely wrecked, but hey, that's the aperture we all know and love. So if it's broke, don't fix it. I think that's the saying, probably. After passing through a few non-testing areas, we finally reach one of the testing spheres that's still intact. For the most part. We complete the chamber, and in the very next one, we're already given both propulsion and repulsion gels to play with. After finishing that test, Cave Johnson has a bit of a confession to make.
Alright, hold on a second, Mel. I don't think you're that stupid that you're going to fall for this anymore.
He changes his voice and reveals that he's not Cave Johnson. His name is Virgil, and he's a core. I really like how after completing a set of tests, we can see how this wrecked testing sphere looks like from the outside. We progress further, and about halfway through the puzzle, we find out we're not alone anymore. There's someone else here, someone powerful and definitely dangerous.
Wait a second, I'm getting some strange voice coming through. I'll patch it through.
Scanning. Lima Whiskey. 70% complete. No vital signs detected. Initiating flooding procedure.
That's coming up from new aperture. What's a... My scans are going nuts. Something's happening. The sphere's unstable. Get out of here. Run!
Before we find out anything else, a cool explosion. Nice. After briefly performing some firefighter duties and cosplaying Gordon Freeman, we get to see a massive hatch door opening. Man, I just love those. We step onto the sorry excuse of an elevator and ascend to the gods. We quickly realize we didn't actually reach heaven, so the journey continues. We do some walking outside. Well, not surface outside, cave outside. Still, it's technically outside any building, so it feels like a breath of fresh air.
Here's an interesting fact. You're not breathing real air. It's too expensive to pump this far down. We just take carbon dioxide out of a room, freshen it up a little, and pump it back in. So you'll be breathing the same room full of air for the rest of your life.
Anyway, after loitering for no more than 20 minutes, we head into the offices where we finally meet Virgil. The whole place is depowered, so we restore the power, which triggers that mysterious someone to reappear.
Detecting power surge at sub-basement station 26. Threat level moderate. Activating security protocols.
We then take an elevator down to the contemporary testing tracks, where we see the laser grill. It wasn't used much in the original Portal, so let me quickly remind you what it does. It allows portals and objects to pass through, but kills you on contact. You'll be seeing a lot of this in this mod. We continue through the test chambers while Virgil does his best to take control of the facility's systems.
I got some control again. There's another lift transfer down below. Hold on. Activating the elevator. Now!
At the same time, the unknown entity tries to track us down and stop us from doing our thing.
Scans indicate target in elevator shaft. Activating trap elevator.
But we're the main character, so if we're set on doing our thing, that's exactly what we're gonna do.
The fuck you think you doing, nigga? I'm doing my thing, nigga. Fuck you doing?
After a few more tests, Virgil finally tells us what this thing actually is.
Known as the Aperture Employee Guardian and Intrusion System, or Aegis for short. I sorted through some of the stuff. So many cat pictures. But I also got some more serious information. Aegis thinks we killed the scientists, so it's activating some sort of kill order. It's going to flood the Enrichment Center, probably with all that goo, to eliminate any and all threats. That means you, that means me, and that means whatever that last thing is.
So yeah, basically it's Aperture's police, and we're wanted. Dead, not alive. It's not RoboCop, it's straight out an Ed 209. They even sound similar.
You now have 15 seconds to comply.
Scanning. Lima Whiskey. 70% complete.
After a few more tests and some maintenance areas, we finally reach the entrance to Aegis layer. Before going in, we are tasked with sabotaging some security systems to make the upcoming encounter at least somewhat survivable. To do that, we have to pull a few levers, press a few buttons and survive a few turrets. After that, it's finally time to meet Aegis, and honestly, this is probably the easiest Portal boss fight I've ever seen. We just solve a few very manageable puzzles with a very generous time limit, and that's it. Remember when Aegis said that 3 life forms are detected?
3 targets acquired. 1 organic, 2 mechanical.
Yeah, so Mel, Virgil, and who's the third one? It will be revealed in a nice cinematic cutscene, along with a pretty crazy plot twist and a post-credits Easter egg. So if you ever get stuck during a difficult test, just keep that in mind as motivation. This mod is noticeably harder than Portal 2, but it gives you 2 ways to play it, story mode and advanced mode. Interestingly, advanced mode was originally the default, but players complained that it was too difficult, so story mode was added later. I actually played advanced mode first by mistake, and the longest test chamber took me about 1.5 hours to solve. My total playtime ended up being 16.2 hours. So if you're okay with slowly losing your sanity, feel free to do the same. After all, according to Sterling, the test subject's brain is already damaged.
Test subjects may experience symptoms of mental defects after long-term chemically induced hibernation.
That said, even though the tests are tough, they often leave you with that classic "how did I not think of it sooner" feeling once you solve them. It's also important to mention that the mod plays fair. There are no cheap moments where you're forced to shoot portals mid-air while fighting awkward camera angles with barely any time. Whenever you do need to place portals while airborne, it's very manageable. It usually takes just a couple of attempts, and that's if your aim is terrible. So yeah, the difficulty feels honest. The challenge comes from clever test design. These chambers require focus, attention to detail, and most importantly, the ability to not overcomplicate things. And that last part is huge. The puzzles already have multiple layers, so if you can clearly see the path for both yourself and your companion cube and break down what you have versus what's missing, you'll save yourself a lot of time. Of course, your experience may vary, depending on how many Portal mods you've played before. Some of the earlier tests might even feel harder than the later ones. If you decide to start with advanced mode, get stuck and feel like watching a playthrough, you're better off switching to story mode, beating the game and then coming back to advanced. It's a much more satisfying experience. To make your experience more enjoyable, here are a few things to keep in mind. To avoid bouncing off surfaces covered in repulsion gel, hold control. You can shoot portals through metal grates. You can also shoot portals through a light bridge, which is the key for solving one of the tests. Don't forget that lasers can pass through glass. The broken test is solvable, gives you an achievement. Turret shots can break glass. Remember in Portal 1 when you had to bait a rocket turret into shooting at you? Yeah, regular turret bullets can do the job too. Sometimes the solution is simpler than you think. You might just need to parkour your way through the area. And don't forget to mess around a bit. There are some silly achievements, like falling into a pit or getting electrocuted. So go get nuts sometimes. Life's not that serious.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Sometimes a portal surface is barely visible or just far away, so just pay attention to your surroundings real good. If you're an achievements guy, then you'd have to play through this mod twice, cause there are a few separate achievements for both modes. Before wrapping things up, I want to mention a few final thoughts. The level design, story and pacing are all done really well. The younger version of Cave Johnson is also quite believable. It feels like this version of him could have existed. My only real issue with the mod is Virgil, and to be fair, this is more of a personal preference than an objective flaw. I was always looking forward to hearing the lines of the original characters, like Whitley and GLaDOS, or Sterling and Emilia Conley from Portal Revolution. With Virgil, not so much. He does his job, he moves the story forward and helps the player, but personality-wise, he leans heavily into being anxious and overly alarmist.
Great. Just great. It seems you tipped off whatever that thing is to our presence. Perfect. Just perfect. The button's blown a fuse. Oh, for crying out loud. I didn't even get a warning siren this time.
And it becomes tiring real quick. Meanwhile, Mel is the one doing all the work, so hearing constant whining and complaints in the background doesn't always add much.
Stop being a bitch and come on!
That said, this isn't necessarily a flaw in design. He is a personality core after all. This is just the personality they chose. It simply didn't click with me. And to be clear, this doesn't take away from the overall quality of the mod. In conclusion, great mod. An awesome Portal experience that brings a lot of new things to the table. The intro sequence alone puts it ahead of most other mods. The advanced mode completely changes how you approach puzzles. The Cave Johnson lines, the massive and atmospheric locations, and even small details like Miles' red painted nails against the yellow portal gun, it all comes together really well. Honestly, there's no reason not to try this one out. Anyway, astronaut, war hero or Olympian, thank you for not loitering for more than 20 minutes. And don't forget to enrich yourself today by applying for testing. Aperture Science needs you.